Joining us now is a medical doctor, Taclikng. It's nice to have you join us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Namaste. Namaste.
Yeah,
Namaste.
We have to maintain the distance. We need to maintain the distance.
Yeah, exactly. Now, talk to us. At a time like this, what a time to celebrate, to commemorate World Tuberculosis Day. At a very critical time, the world is in confusion when it comes to the threats around COVID-19, and then we have World Tuberculosis Day. Nigeria is one of the countries with a very high critical mass number of tuberculosis. Talk to us how this has always been, and it seems we are not reducing the numbers of tuberculosis in our country.
If there's anything that the COVID infection showed us, it further emphasized the importance of paying attention to critical public health issues. Tuberculosis was like COVID in those days. In Europe, in the 19th century, before the discovery of the germ causing tuberculosis, 1 in 7 people died every day because of tuberculosis. It was such a huge thing that you have to isolate and push the person with tuberculosis and label them all sorts of names until Robert Koch came and said, listen, I now found a germ that is causing tuberculosis, and that brought the transformation. And then, even up to now, you see, as of 2018, 10 million people have an infection worldwide, 6 million of them women, 3 million men, 1 million children. And every blessed day, tuberculosis kills 4,000 people, and there's 30,000 infections every blessed day. So, you know, if you look at the financial cost, it's huge and humongous. Tuberculosis is such an embarrassment. You know, it's a health issue, it's a social issue, it's an economic issue. So the world loses at an estimate of 12 billion, 13 billion every year, dollars, every year because of tuberculosis. Now, unfortunately for us, this is a preventable and a curable disease. So why is such disease exerting so much influence? Nigeria is one of the countries contributing the highest burden of tuberculosis. And we have seen the unholy alliance between tuberculosis and HIV. You know, both they're enhancing themselves, tuberculosis and malnutrition, tuberculosis and diabetes, tuberculosis and poverty, because the condition that actually promotes tuberculosis is most seen in the slums, the sprawling slums all over the country as it were, okay? Overcrowding, lack of free air, you know, and then ventilation, lack of access, you know, to sanitation and poverty. So we see that tuberculosis enhances poverty, and poverty enhances tuberculosis. For the world, it's even a great health threat because now we are seeing strains of tuberculosis that are resistant to drugs. What that means is that we don't want, if tuberculosis can achieve the capacity of transmissibility or contagiousness, like some of these viruses, the world is in trouble. So we must be able to stand firm and look at how to eradicate tuberculosis.
And if we are to look at how to begin to eradicate it, because like it is said, we have the highest burden, where do we begin from? Is it from sanitation? Is it addressing issues of poverty? Where exactly do we begin?
In fact, it's a multi-directional. So, but the first thing is for us to rise up and, you know, and bring the necessary political will, necessary financial muscle, necessary commitment and investment into various areas of people. Of course, the cheapest point where we can start, given the situation of finances, is actually education. You know, nice, we can wait on the 24th, which was the day that Robert Koch said, okay, this is a germ that causes tuberculosis, 24th of March, for us to talk about tuberculosis, but it must be an everyday dialogue. Now, we don't know how other germs is going to interact with tuberculosis and cause more problem for us. It's every day, we must talk about it every day in primary school, in secondary school, in our institutions. Now one of the greatest challenges is the access, okay, access to drugs, access to care. Now, we must make it equitable. Like, this is time, really, like the thing for this year, it is time for us to increase that access. Quite a lot of people, you know, there are a lot of missing people who think that tuberculosis is just one of the coughs that you need to use cough syrup and you'll be okay. So that education will help them to overcome this gap. Now, you must be able to provide free, yes, there's free treatment, but there's an additional cost. Because by the time you are seeing the tuberculosis, you are seeing complication already. I have a cousin who had tuberculosis, 2 of them recently, and of course, one was in pulmonale, which was even a complication of tuberculosis, even at this time. So that education, access to this, and then finance for tuberculosis, and then we must make it as much as our direct observable treatment short course, which is the method for treating tuberculosis, must be taken to the smallest local level as possible. So we, as a nation, we must be able to focus and look at those high things, because if you don't reduce poverty also, if you're having a burden of malnutrition, if you're having overcrowding, and then, and there's no ventilation, the sanitation is poor, tell you what, we are seeing germs jumping from animals to human now. We'll be seeing germs jumping from slums to humanity. That will be another epicenter of all sorts of diseases.
Wow.
We must rise up.
All right, as it is right now, what are the visible symptoms of tuberculosis that one can see and know that, oh, this person has tuberculosis?
It's one of the diseases where we say it has a protein manifestation. When you say protein manifestation, you may even not know that it is tuberculosis. But one thing that is, if it affects the pulmonary region, which is the commonest place, it seems these germs have predilection for pulmonary region, because they know that's where you take in vital oxygen. So when it affects the pulmonary region, the person coughs, okay? And the cough is chronic, lasting more than 3 months. There's a lot of sweating with it. There's loss of weight. The cough may actually be foul-smelling or have blood in it. The person who is losing weight, who is coughing for more than 3 months, who is sweating at night, I think it's tuberculosis or proven otherwise. But if it affects so many other parts of the body, its manifestation is different. So for us, is that once someone is coughing first week, second week, and you're not seeing the difference, the best thing is to either go and check whether the person has tuberculosis.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tui Mebawandu, for your time and lecture too. All right, joining us now is the medical doctor, Tui Mebawandu. It's nice to have you join us right now.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
When it comes to the talk about TB response, I wonder what that is.
You mean in terms of government
responding to TB, exactly.
Yeah, essentially, there's a target. The target is that we want to, eradicate and deal with all cases of TB. Initially, we set 2020, the world set 2020 as the time to eradicate tuberculosis. But now, at the end of 2020, or even at 2020, we're not seeing much. So we've moved it into the SDGs now, that by 2030, we should have eradicated TB. So in fact, doing that means that we need to ramp up activities, because let's face it, if we don't do something drastic and critical now, between now and 2030, we will have lost about 28 million people to tuberculosis at the cost of 1% of the world GDP, over ₦1 trillion. That is challenging, that is humongous. Now, let's also face it that in Nigeria, for instance, when TB is not the only chronic infection we're dealing with, okay? We have the non-communicable diseases, we have other infections. Now we're seeing COVID-19 actually overshadowing the TB day, special day for TB. Now, so the question is this: how do we now deal with all the humongous thing affecting us? How do we move that SDGs? Even if we have SDGs, what's our own local SDG? We must be able to domesticate these SDGs and see how to move ahead. Now, key to it is the fact that, we must be able to have that political will. As stated, it is time for us to actually raise the political will to deal with that scourge. Not only that scourge, because a simple scheme can ensure that some common communicable diseases are dealt with. Then we must be able to raise finance. Fund is critical. You want to change health system, follow the money. Because you need money for drugs, you need money for research, you need money to mobilize human resources to deal with those challenges. So you have to follow the money. We must continue to monitor and interrelate with people. Now, like I said, campaign is about the cheapest thing for us that we can do, but we must be able to do that campaign in such a way that it will be meaningful to us. Now, as far back as 1882, Robert Koch went to his colleague and said that I've now isolated the bacillus causing tuberculosis. They listened and accepted it. But in our own time, people will carry anointing oil. People will be doing night vigil.
So it means people are still ignorant about what these are.
The key thing we need to do, what the heck do I know? But the heck I know is this, that even at the traditional religious, spiritual institutions, they must be able to give some cogent, sensible information to their congregants. We can't just be selling hopes every time.
So as we commemorate this day, how should we address issues with regards to tuberculosis?
Now, the challenge is still with us. Huge. It's shameful that Nigeria is now leading the pack in terms of death with tuberculosis. The multi-drug resistant is still hanging in Nigeria. We have about 500,000 multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. Nigeria is leading the pack. That's a huge issue. Now, we must not neglect it. We must appreciate the fact that because we are number 2 in HIV/AIDS, we are number 1 in tuberculosis, we are leading in malnutrition. We know that this combination is an alliance of terror. If you have malnutrition, if you have tuberculosis, and you have HIV, all of them enhances themselves. So for us, we must look at a holistic way to deal with it and know that as much as you feed your people properly, as much as you eradicate malnutrition, you are dealing with tuberculosis. As much as you step up the checks for HIV, you're also dealing with tuberculosis. As much as you provide good accommodations, good environment and sanitation for your people, you're also dealing with tuberculosis. So for us, is to put it at the forefront. We shouldn't wait to the 24th of every March and every
before
year
we talk about
tuberculosis.
But talk to us, how contagious is tuberculosis?
For every person that is expelling the germ, it's going to infect a minimum of 5 to 15 persons. So you can layer it in such a way, 5 to 15 persons. And also, in the whole world, we have 25%, that's a quarter of the whole world, having latent tuberculosis. What latent tuberculosis means that the germ is there in your system. For anything that happens, if your immune system is depressed, if the person is having diabetes, if he's an alcoholic, if he smokes a lot, and he has HIV, the thing can flare up at any time. So
it has become like plasmodium that is always in the system.
So the latent, what you call the gun focus or gun complex is there, hanging somewhere, and waiting for anything that's going to reduce the immune system of human beings.
So the responsibility for any individual is to ensure that they do not trigger this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what can they do to ensure that?
Individual, simply this. Yeah. Yes, you have to live healthy. Basic thing, sanitation, of course, even in your holy books, cleanliness, sanitation, hygiene, okay, eat well, okay, and then when you have complaint, don't self-medicate, especially if it has to do with cough and some, loss of weight, sweating. Don't self-medicate. Limit your self-medication because that one will complicate the treatment of such illness as tuberculosis. So get as much information. Yes, it's nice for us to have smartphones and be chatting, but these are key issues that you should get information on because, tell you what, you'll be shocked. There's nobody out there that's going to really stand up and protect you. You need to do things for yourself. You need to actually take charge of your health because that's the first focus. Nobody can love you more than yourself. So now let's devote some time to understand the challenges we're facing health-wise, and let's take decisions that will promote and enhance our health. The COVID-19 showed us clearly the nexus between health, business, economy, and even spirituality. Who can go to any place of worship now?
Now, okay. So for persons who find themselves with this tuberculosis, is there, and also taking treatment, perhaps there is nutrition to help accelerate treatment or help with the healing process? Again,
there are no medical interventions, which includes, staying in an airy place, windows open, maintaining some distance with person, separating your spoon and cups at the initial stage. Eating good food is key in treatment. So, but again, there are centers, and this is another thing we should have done. Yes, now we're seeing the use of public space to campaign about COVID. We shouldn't stop. The public space should be used to campaign about some of those key things that are affecting us. Should you have cough that is lasting more than 2 months, please contact this center, I hope somebody is going to pick the phone number. But we've seen that the Stop TB and Global Fund for TB HIV is doing quite a lot now by trying to include private hospitals into the management. So sometimes, you must be empowered to go to the community to check people and find out who is coughing here, how long have you been coughing, and then, and then make the treatment easier. Of course, now there's a bit advanced treatment which we call gene experts, that we use to look whether the person is having tuberculosis and whether the person is having a resistant strain of tuberculosis. These are the centers we need to deepen across the nations if we need to win this challenge of tuberculosis.
How available are the drugs to cure tuberculosis? Because you said it's preventable and it is curable.
It's curable, it's preventable and curable. Yeah, anti-TB drugs are quite available, but the key thing is this: we cannot allow clients to hold those drugs and then not use it properly. If you miss the drug and there's resistance, where are you going to go to? Then again, maybe you have to use your anointing oil. So, but the key thing is that the drugs are available. Once you are diagnosed, the drugs are available. The major challenge is that if you're having multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, that one may require, taking daily injections, and then will require a lot of precautions on the part of the person administering so that the person does not also pick the resistance strain.
Are those affordable for the average person who might want
I think
might need that assistance?
Essentially, the TB drugs are free for now, to the best of my knowledge. They are free. And people should embrace, such thing to treat any cough that they cannot explain.
Okay.
All right.
We have to leave you here now. Dr. Taclikng the TB, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right.
Joining us now is medical doctor Taclikng the TB. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. What would be a people or centered tuberculosis response as it is being championed this year?
It must be as local as possible. You have to actually take it to the grassroots as much as possible. That's the first thing. Second thing, it must not be at any cost. The universal coverage should actually reflect in the TB management through the whole scheme of TB management. So it must not be discriminatory, okay? It must take into consideration the culture and the peculiar belief of the person. And it must respect the rights of the individual concerned. So that is what we call a people-centered care. Unfortunately, we see quite a lot of stigma. We see a lot of discrimination. In fact, even the access to testing and TB drugs could be quite challenging. Now, even with the fact that because the fund has to come, specifically from United Nations, to mobilize and ensure that this thing is reduced, even with that, there are a lot of challenges with testing, but to a large extent, it's supposed to be free. You see other added costs that will make it difficult for those clients to access care. And you can be rest assured, because as much as possible, it's not the disease of the affluence. I'm talking about the developed world. It's our own disease. So they tend to distance themselves from it, unlike a lot of noise you are hearing about coronavirus. You've just mentioned it. Tuberculosis is one of the deadliest. About the deadliest disease, kills 4,000 every day, kills more than HIV/AIDS. Now, the global death on coronavirus now is just above 7,000 or thereabout. So, but a day, yesterday and today, tuberculosis have killed more than those number of people. So now we should be able to, because tuberculosis is gradually becoming, if we're not careful, diseases of the developing world. Or, we must be able to create our own response. Because if the response must be coming from United Nations TB Fund or from Stop AIDS, it's going to get to a point where it will not be their own challenge and it's be our challenge. And then if you now have to travel there, they will say, okay, go and be sure that you are free from TB before you enter our country.
Of course. But the point there is, the countries that have these prevalence in their country, like Nigeria and some other developing countries, you're saying, if the funds are not coming as they're supposed to be, and on the other hand, each one country is not able to muster the resources to fight it, how about collaboration?
Yeah, well, I think that is essentially what the United Nations have chosen to do. That is what WHO is supposed to do and assist. But collaboration, because you use the right word collaboration, you must also be sufficiently empowered, sufficiently be muzzled enough to react at your own level for people to collaborate. You can't then, give everything to them to do. There's going to be a time of, what we call donor fatigue. They will wake up and feel that this money can be spent on any other thing. Look at this coronavirus, for instance. we're going to experience a lot of depression in terms of economy, a lot of job loss, and challenge of finance. And at that point in time, okay, even in terms of logistics on drug supply, people are those are supposed to manufacture the drugs are on lockdown. They cannot go to work. And then if your TB program requires drugs and then you cannot get the drug, what happens? So local content, local, ownership, devolving the whole process down to the local system where it can respond and be agile will be most desirable, because we've not seen the end of any lockdown. We've not seen the end of germs jumping from anywhere to humanity. We're going to see more of epidemics. Let's be factual. If anybody's telling you that epidemic is going to just disappear one day, they're joking. We're going to see the more of epidemics. No matter the amount of prayer you go to do on mountain, that's a bloody waste of time. You will see more of it. So now we need to actually create that local response to deal with epidemics, our chronic illnesses, including tuberculosis.
How would primary health care systems, how will they help in this situation?
In tackling this?
Yeah.
Indeed, the primary healthcare system should be the center point of TB treatment, especially even at different levels. Except we're having extra multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, because the direct observable treatment short course, which is DOTS, is executed at the primary healthcare level. In fact, the screening should actually be, done mainly at the primary healthcare level, because it's closer to the community. People that are coughing, you are familiar with them. You can do your campaign there. One campaign must be domiciled there. The treatment should be domiciled there. The follow-up should be domiciled there. And other habits that can help to promote health must be domiciled there. So if we get the primary healthcare system right, a lot of our challenges in health system will vanish. But the point is this. We have how many? 20,000 primary health cares all over the country, and then they're adding another 10,000. But the thing is, it's not just building. It's about human resources. It's about creating. Where are you going to get? Because wait a minute, about 35,000, 40,000 doctors practicing in Nigeria. Even some of us who chose to, walk away. We brain drain. We are trying to brain drain to some other areas. So there are no human resources for health. Now, government is not spending requisite money on science and education. Science education that will, produce health workers.
Personnel.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have to leave it here now. Thank you very much, Dr. Tuime Bawandu. Thank you so much.